Hi, I'm Kent. It's been a while since I've actually been working on pots. Recently I've been playing around with my test tiles, trying out some new glazes and some different slips. If you look over my shoulder here back behind me, you actually see there's a fair number of pots sitting on the shelf. These are basically ready to go. They've all been bisque fired, and in this video I want to go ahead and glaze and do the final glaze firing. Alright, let's walk through what we're going to glaze today. This is about half the pots that I just pulled off the shelf. So in the center here are some of my oldest pots that have yet to be fired. I've got 3 of these square shaped ones. I have 1 of my big 3D printed mold. This is getting towards the end of this set of clay, and so the inside's actually a little bit chunky here, but as a planter I'm okay with that. And then the last 2 in this clay that I have are hanging back here. So this is my round mold. I just folded in the corner. So this one's square-ish. And this one I decided to do as a triangle. So this is the last of my B mix. Hanging off to the side here, barely in frame. So these over here are leftover clay. So it was originally this clay here, but I've added various colorants, and so this is what was left over. So I've got my big round planter, 1 of the taller ones, and then 2 more of the square ones hanging back here. And finally hanging over out here on this side is my newest clay. So this is the clay that I mixed up from dry powder directly into slip. So I've got my big round one, another square one, and a smallish one, and another medium-sized one. One thing you'll notice about all these is they are missing the holes in the bottom. So pretty much everything I made so far has actually been a planter. These I'm actually going to keep, and they will actually be able to hold something. Not sure exactly what I'm going to use these for, but I don't think they'll be planters. Okay, and here's the rest of what I wanted to glaze. So all of these right in here. These are again all in my new clay that I mixed up from dry powder. I've got a couple of the square ones, got a bunch of just regular round ones in various sizes. Got a pair of the larger ones. And then last but not least, barely in frame back here, these are my newest additions. So these are the ones that I directly printed molds for plaster and then slip cast these. So I have 3 of these, 1 here and then a couple back here. I've not glazed any of these yet, so these are going to be, I think, the most exciting and interesting. There's a fair bit of texture in these from my original 3D printing process. So I think this might be an interesting interaction with the glazes that I pick. One of the other things to note is all of my newer pots have my maker's mark in the bottom. All right, so I think I'm going to go from oldest to newest in terms of my pots. This is probably more than will fit in my kiln. My kiln's pretty big, it always surprises me, so we'll see. Off camera, I am going to wet sand all of these, make sure there aren't any sharp bits. And before I apply the glaze, I'm going to do a quick wipe down to try and get any last dust. As you can see, just in handling these, there's a fair bit of dust on them. So I'll do that, and then we'll reset and pull out some glaze. All right, I think I've got everything ready here to glaze. I'd actually forgotten what glazes I had. It's been a while since I've glazed. So I'm going to start here with my ironwood glaze. I just mixed that up with my immersion blender before I started filming. You guys don't need to hear that. And then I've got my first pot. This is my largest pot. It's from my 3D printing molding process where the mold itself was almost impossible to get out of the plaster. Since learned a few things since then. I've got an old glaze container that I've cut the bottom out of so that the glaze can pass through. I think I'll do it this way, and the container will just sit up here on top. And for these big ones, I've just been pouring on the glaze. It's been working really well. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, went around a couple times, pouring it on. And while it's wet here, I'm gonna go ahead and get the foot. All right, looks pretty good. I'll go ahead and dip it. So we've got the rim. All right, there's that one. I'll set it off to the side to dry. Reclaim my glaze. All right, and the next pot, I'm gonna give it a quick wipe down with clean water, get all the dust off. And same thing. All right, so for my second glaze, I went ahead and decided to use this apricot, and I just poured it on just like before. So this one here is not actually a planter. I don't have a hole in the bottom, so I'm going to glaze the inside using this same color. So we'll dump it all in, and then swirl it around and dump it over the edge. And I managed to get the outside. All right, I just mixed up my purple, and I think I want to put it on the outside of this one here. All right, so next I think I'm going to use my Dove Gray. So this is a gray with speckles in it. And I'm going to do my two bowls with this, both inside and out. So I'm going to pour some in here, which I will spin around into the other one. Might as well put more in. And then we'll spin this around and out. All right, I put a little bit more in there since I set it down while it was still a little wet. All right, so I think with that one I'm about halfway done. I am done with all of the ones with the old clay and the reclaimed clay and the few ones with the new clay that I hadn't put my maker's mark in. I think at this point I am going to pause and let everything dry thoroughly. I will touch up all the glaze, basically rub out the runs that are in several of these pots. And then I think we will start playing Kiln Tetris and loading my kiln. I'm not exactly sure how many pots will fit in, and I probably only want to glaze as many as I'll be able to get in this time. So this pot here is one of the trickiest to deal with because it's so tall. So I'm going to put it in first. This one here I tried to clean up, but this glaze really stains, so we'll see what it looks like once it's fired. All right, I think that's about as full as we're going to get it. All right, those are all tucked in, so let's go and glaze some more pots. All right, the glazing marathon continues. So off camera, I went ahead and waxed up the bottoms of some of these pots, in particular all the ones with my maker's mark in it. And here I have Old Forge Creations Cobalt Glaze. This one turns nice and blue, so I think I'm gonna see if I can dunk a few of these pots. And so these I'm gonna go ahead and glaze fully. I've got a piece of wire here to help hold on through the hole. And we just go for a swim. Next, same thing. Got another smaller one here. All right, so I think that's all I can dip. So I'm gonna pour this glaze onto a couple pots as well. So this is my newest mold, and it has this interesting 3D printed texture on the outside. I think it might play nicely with this glaze. And even though this is a planter, I want to do the inside of this one too. All right, last pot. So for this one, I have this rusty orange art glaze. I'm hoping the art glaze will play again nicely with this geometric form. Next step, off camera, I'm going to clean up all these glazes, deal with the runs and things like that. Then I'll bring you back and we'll finish loading the kiln. Went ahead and loaded my cones. I tend to forget these, so I put them in already. Trying to not block my view of the cones here, so putting in the right size pot in the right spot. All right, I think we're all ready. I'll go ahead and button this up and I will fire it tonight. The kiln has fired and it's cooled down. Let's open it up. Ooh, lots of pretty blue. So one of the first things is to ignore all the pots. We'll check those out in a second and look at the cones I put in here. So this one's cone 5, it went over. This one's cone 6. This one's cone 7. It actually looks like we probably fired to cone 7, so we probably overfired a little bit. I'm not quite sure I have the parameters for my kiln controller that I made dialed in, so I might have to look at that. And here are all my test tiles. I've got a separate video on these, so I'm not going to talk much about them. All right, where should we start? Let's start with all of these cobalt glazed pots. I was worried that it might run on the bottom, but I think waxing did the right thing, and it broke on the edges. Nice pool in the bottom here. Another planter. Well, this one's a little bubbly. That was the side, I think, facing the elements. So I wonder if it got a little too hot. This one is also one of the first 5 glazes, but this one has copper in it. I went ahead and tried it out. The surface finish on this one is a little bit weird. It's not smooth and glossy like the blue is. These 3 pots are from my newest mold. So this one has the cobalt glaze on it, and it broke around the edges, and I was curious about the 3D printed texture. You can actually see it through the glaze, but it is smooth. And my robin's eggs glaze, this one I just really like. Got a little drippy. Tons of speckles on the inside. And the last one here, looks like we had a few runs. I'm gonna have to clean up my kiln shelf. And this one's yellow on my reclaimed clay that fires this nice olive color. All right, I'll take out the shelves and we'll look at the next layer. All right, just a few pots here. So this is the Dove glaze. The inside wound up really good. Same glaze on a bowl. This one's actually a bowl since I don't have a hole in the bottom. And the big planter with the brown on it. And another in my regular clay, that's the reclaimed. And finally the purple on this olive colored clay. All right, and last layer. So first the ones you can't see very well. This one I glazed the inside and the outside. And this one the surface finish isn't all that great, so something's going on. Last of my bowls, this one got the orange on the outside, the yellow on the inside. Again, got this orange peel going on. Purple, this is the one with the foot I added. Actually looks like that worked out pretty well. Just need to do a better job next time. And the yellow on the olive definitely changes the appearance. And the brown ones I did. Definitely see the variation from the thickness of the glaze. The squarish one. And here is my kiln load all laid out. So here are some with my reclaimed clay. One more. That winds up being this olive color. These here are the last batch of my old B-mix clay. A lot of them I decided to glaze in this brown. I have a few that I decided to make not planters because they don't have holes in the bottom. The surface finish on these isn't great, so I think I'll need to investigate that a little bit more deeply, but that'll be for a future time. And then all of these are in my new clay, and they all have my maker's mark on the bottom. So this deep blue here is Old Forge Creations Cobalt Blue. It is super shiny, I really like it. My new form that I finally was able to finish, and this one here is the copper glaze out of the same First 5 family. Overall, I am quite pleased with these. I think they turned out well. I hope you have found that interesting. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. Thanks.